hadn't seen my son in 3 months. He'd stopped answering my calls and his texts grew shorter, colder. When I asked if everything was fine, he said he was just busy with work. But a father knows when something's wrong. So one Friday morning, I packed a small bag and drove 5 hours across the state to his house. I didn't tell him I was coming. I just wanted to see him, to make sure he was all right. When I got there, his car was parked out front. The blinds were open. The lights inside were still on. But no one answered the door. I knocked again, and again. Nothing. Then from across the street I heard a woman shouting my name. It was his neighbor, Mrs. Harlan. She was running toward me, panic written all over her face. "Don't go inside," she screamed. At first I thought she was warning me about a gas leak or something. But when I saw the fear in her eyes, I realized this wasn't about safety. This was about something or someone inside that house. The wind was sharp when I stepped out of my car, the kind that carried a quiet sting, whispering of storms still hours away. My son's street looked like something off a postcard. Fresh lawns, trimmed hedges, Christmas lights still half-strung from last year. But behind all that perfection, there was a silence that didn't fit. I stood there a moment staring at his front porch. Same welcome mat, same hanging fern my wife gave him when he bought the house. It should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt wrong, like the house was holding its breath. When Mrs. Harlan shouted for me not to go inside, it startled me more than it should have. She'd always been polite, a quiet woman who waved from her driveway. Now she was running toward me in slippers, eyes wide, hair loose, shouting words that didn't make sense. "Mr. Carter, please, don't open that door." I froze halfway up the steps. "Why?" I asked. She didn't answer at first, just stopped a few feet away, clutching a folded towel like a shield. Then she said, "He's not there." "None of them are." "None of them?" Before I could ask what she meant, she turned, scanning the street as if someone was watching her. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, and backed away toward her house. Then she was gone, slamming her door shut, blind snapping closed behind her. I stood there, my hand still hovering over the doorknob. The rational part of me wanted to laugh it off. Maybe she was confused or frightened by something. But the rest of me, the part that had known my son since the day he was born, felt the unease sink deeper. I tried the knob. Locked. So I took out the spare key he'd hidden years ago beneath the porch light. It was still there. The door creaked open and stale air met me. Not the smell of a home someone lived in, but of a place that had been sealed off for weeks. Dust, faint mildew, something metallic underneath. "David?" I called. My voice echoed back. The living room looked normal enough at first glance. TV, couch, his wife's favorite blanket draped over the armrest. But the coffee table was coated with dust and the digital clock on the wall blinked 12-hour, like the power had been out. I walked farther in. Every step made the floorboards sigh. In the kitchen, unopened mail sat piled against the wall. The calendar was still flipped to May. There were dishes in the sink, but the water had evaporated long ago. I reached for the refrigerator door. It buzzed faintly, still running. Inside were bottles of water, a half-empty carton of milk that had gone sour, and a single plastic container labeled Tuesday dinner. Tuesday. 3 weeks ago. That's when I heard the thud. It came from upstairs, soft, but enough to freeze me mid-motion. I waited, listening. The house fell silent again. I set the container down and started up the stairs. Each step felt heavier, like the air itself was thickening. At the top landing, sunlight filtered through half-closed blinds, streaking across the carpet in pale gold lines. My son's bedroom door was open. His bed was neatly made. On the nightstand sat his watch, wallet, and keys, all lined up like he'd meant to come back any minute. But the closet door stood ajar. When I reached for it, a faint whiff of bleach hit me. I opened it slowly. Inside, everything was organized, the suits, the shoes, but on the floor lay a single item that didn't belong, a woman's scarf, red silk, twisted as if torn loose. I picked it up. It smelled faintly of perfume. Not my daughter-in-law's. That's when the window behind me rattled. I turned, half expecting someone outside. Nothing, just Mrs. Harlan's curtains shifting. Then from the corner of the room a phone buzzed. I followed the sound to the desk. My son's laptop sat closed, but beside it a burner phone blinked with a new message. Meeting moved. Don't let anyone in. The timestamp was yesterday. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Another message appeared. Same number, same cold tone. If he shows up, tell him it's too late. I stared at the screen, pulse rising. Whoever sent that message thought they were talking to my son. A dozen thoughts collided at once. Had David gotten mixed up in something? Why was the house empty? And what in God's name did too late mean? I pocketed the phone and turned toward the window. Across the street, Mrs. Harlan's blinds fluttered again. Someone was watching. I locked the front door behind me and crossed over. Her front porch light flicked on before I even reached the steps. She cracked the door open 2 inches. I told you not to go in there, she whispered. Mrs. Harlan, I said quietly. Where's my son? Her eyes darted left and right before she stepped aside and let me in. The house smelled faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner. She led me to the living room, where the curtains were drawn tight. On the coffee table sat an untouched cup of tea, steam long gone. She wrung her hands and said, You shouldn't have come back, Mr. Carter. Back? I repeated. I haven't been here since last spring. Her expression changed, confusion, then fear. But here I saw you, I frowned. Saw me? She nodded. 3 nights ago. You, or someone who looked exactly like you, was standing on your son's porch, just standing there for nearly an hour. When I called out, they turned and walked away. My mouth went dry. Someone pretending to be me. Mrs. Harlan, I said slowly, did you tell the police? Her gaze fell to the floor. They don't listen anymore. Not after what happened to your daughter-in-law. My heart stuttered. What happened to her? She hesitated. They said it was an accident. A car crash. But the car was found 2 towns over, burned down to the frame. No one ever found her. I sank into the couch, the words hitting harder than I expected. I hadn't spoken to David or his wife in months. Not since that argument at Thanksgiving. I'd thought they just wanted distance. But this, why didn't anyone call me? I whispered, her eyes softened. We tried, Mr. Carter. The number you left was disconnected. Disconnected? I hadn't changed it in years. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Something was wrong on a level that made no sense. Do you still have the police report? I asked. She nodded slowly, disappearing down the hall. I used the moment to steady myself, scanning her shelves. Family photos, a small Bible, a framed newspaper clipping about a local charity. Everything normal, but when she returned she wasn't holding paper. She had an envelope, unmarked, already opened. I found this in my mailbox the morning after the fire. She said quietly. No return address. I took it. Inside was a single photograph. David standing beside his car, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. The man's face was half hidden by a baseball cap, but there was something oddly familiar about his build. On the back of the photo, someone had written, He trusted the wrong friend. My stomach turned. Who sent this? I asked. She shook her head. No one knows. But since that day, there have been cars parked up the street every night. Black sedans, engines off, lights dim. I don't even go to the window anymore. I folded the photo and slipped it into my pocket. Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. You've helped more than you realize. As I stood to leave, she caught my sleeve. If you value your life, she whispered, forget this. Whoever they are, they don't want you finding him. I nodded, but my mind was already elsewhere. Forget? Not a chance. When I stepped outside, the street had darkened. A light drizzle began to fall, and I could feel eyes on me. Heavy, deliberate. I turned the corner toward my car and stopped. A black sedan idled 2 houses down, just like she'd said. The driver's silhouette was motionless. I got in my car, pretending not to notice, and started the engine. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, the sedan headlights flicked on too. They followed me. For nearly 6 blocks, every turn I made, they matched it perfectly. No attempt to hide it, just silent pressure. At the 7th intersection, I pulled into a small gas station and parked by the pumps. The sedan slowed, paused across the street, then continued on. I waited 2 full minutes before exhaling. Inside the station, I bought a coffee and asked the attendant if he'd seen the car before. He shrugged. Yeah, they come by every night lately. Always park near Maple Drive, never get out. Maple Drive, that was my son's street. As I stepped back outside, I noticed a small security camera above the entrance. Hey, I asked, do you keep recordings? The attendant nodded. Sure, loops every 72 hours. I handed him a 20. Mind if I take a look? He hesitated, but money had its own logic. Within minutes, I was behind the counter, scrolling through the footage from last night. At 11:17 p.m., there it was, the black sedan parked in the same spot. But it wasn't empty. A figure stepped out, a man in a dark coat, baseball cap, same build as the one in the photograph. He crossed the street, stopped in front of my son's house, and looked straight toward the camera before vanishing behind the porch. When he turned his head slightly, the light caught his face. I froze. It wasn't my son, it was me. Or someone who looked exactly like me. When I left that gas station, my hands were shaking too hard to hold the wheel steady. I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind or if someone had truly stolen my face. The rain had thickened into a steady curtain, blurring the streetlights as I drove toward the motel off Highway 14. I didn't want to go home, not yet. Not until I understood what was happening. Inside the cheap, dimly lit room, I laid out what little I had. The photo, the phone with strange messages, and a mind full of questions. I played the security footage again on my laptop, freezing on the moment the imposter looked at the camera. The resemblance was terrifying. Same hair, same lines on the face, same slight tilt in the jaw. But the eyes, they were colder. That was no coincidence. Someone had studied me. I tried calling the police once again, but as soon as I mentioned my name, the operator's tone shifted. Mr. Carter? She asked. You already filed a missing persons report last week. About your son, I froze. What did you just say? You came in 3 days ago, she said. You gave us photos, signed the report, said your son's disappearance might be connected to your daughter-in-law's accident. My stomach dropped. That wasn't me. She hesitated, clearly thinking I was confused. Sir, you even left a forwarding address. I forced my voice steady. Where? She read it out. Room 212, Glenbrook Lodge, Riverside. That was less than 10 miles from where I sat. The drive there was a blur of adrenaline and disbelief. When I pulled into the cracked parking lot of Glenbrook Lodge, a flickering sign hummed in the rain. It looked abandoned from the outside. No lights in most of the windows, just a faint glow from a single door at the end of the corridor. Room 212, I parked 2 spaces away, left the engine running, and climbed the metal steps. Every sound, my shoes, the dripping gutters, even my breath on, seemed too loud. I reached the door. The Do Not Disturb sign was hanging backwards. I knocked once. No answer. Knocked again. It's the manager, I lied. Still nothing. I gripped the handle. It turned. The smell hit first. Stale coffee and old cigarettes. Inside, the room was identical to mine. Cheap furniture, sagging curtains, one bed. But it wasn't empty. On the desk sat a small open briefcase. Inside, fake IDs. My name, my face. Driver's licenses, bank cards, even a passport. All with my photo, but different signatures. There was also a newspaper clipping. I leaned closer to read the headline. Local woman still missing after fiery crash. Below it was a photo of my daughter-in-law, smiling. Next to it, someone had scrawled in black ink, Phase 1 complete. I felt my blood go cold. Whoever this was, they weren't just impersonating me. They were building an entire narrative around my life. Then I saw it. A second envelope half buried under the briefcase. It was addressed to Detective Ronald Hale, City PD. Inside was a handwritten letter. Detective, as discussed, the deal is almost finalized. The father has been eliminated. The property papers are ready for transfer. The insurance payout should arrive within a week. Keep the file closed until further notice. PC, my initials. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Someone was setting me up. And if that detective was in on it, I was already being hunted. I left everything as it was and slipped back outside. The rain had eased, but the air felt heavier. I got into my car and started the engine, then froze again. In the rearview mirror, a man stepped out of the shadows at the far end of the lot. Dark coat, baseball cap. He looked directly at me. For a full 10 seconds, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, my smile, and walked slowly toward his car, a black sedan. By the time I hit the main road, I could see his headlights trailing me again. I didn't drive home. Instead, I took the back roads toward the industrial district. I'd spent most of my life in construction. I knew those forgotten routes better than anyone. I pulled under an overpass and killed the lights. The black sedan passed me, heading straight ahead. When it disappeared, I finally let myself breathe. That's when I saw the envelope on the passenger seat. My name was written in block letters across it. I hadn't brought it. Inside was a single photo. Again, my son and the imposter together. This time they were in front of a small building, Carter and Sons Realty. Written on the back, he trusted you too. The next morning I went there. The realty office had been mine once, before I retired. My son had taken over 5 years ago, and since then he'd turned it into something much bigger. I'd barely been part of it, but I still knew every inch of that building. The receptionist looked nervous when I walked in. Mr. Carter, yes? I said carefully. She hesitated. Didn't you just leave? I kept my face blank. I forgot something. Mind if I check the office? She nodded, unsure. Inside my son's office, I noticed a pile of unsigned contracts, property transfers, asset documents, all under Carter Holdings. My son's signature was on them, but beside it was mine, forged perfectly. Every file pointed to one thing: total liquidation of the family business. And there was something else, a flash drive taped under the desk. I pocketed it and left quickly. Back at the motel, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The screen filled with recordings, security footage, camera stills, emails. The imposter was everywhere, talking to clients, visiting banks, even standing beside my son in front of our old family home. But the timestamps told another story. Most were from after my son's supposed disappearance, meaning he wasn't missing. He was still alive, and he was working with the man pretending to be me. For hours I sat there trying to make sense of it. Why would my son do this? Why fake his wife's death? Why erase me from the picture? Then it clicked. The last time we spoke, he'd mentioned an investment partner, someone offering to streamline the business for faster profit. I'd warned him to be careful, that greed attracts liars. He'd laughed it off, now it made sense. They'd found a way to make me the fall guy. Fake the wife's death. Sell everything, collect the insurance, and disappear. Only something had gone wrong. The car crash, the empty house, the cryptic messages. They weren't accidents. Someone had betrayed the plan. That night I received a text from an unknown number. You were supposed to stay gone. Meet me at the pier, midnight, no name. But I didn't need one. The old pier was quiet except for the waves and the occasional creak of the boards. I parked, turned off my headlights, and waited. At exactly midnight, a figure appeared at the edge of the dock. I got out, staying in the shadows. David? I called. He turned. My son. Alive. He looked thinner, older, eyes full of something between guilt and exhaustion. Dad, he said softly, you shouldn't have come. I buried you in my mind months ago, I said. What the hell is going on? He looked away. It was supposed to be temporary. We needed money. The man and the one who looks like you, he said he could fix everything. Said he could make us disappear cleanly. And your wife? I demanded. She found out, he whispered. Tried to stop us. That's why. He stopped. His voice broke. She's gone, isn't she? I said. He nodded. He killed her. Said she was a liability. The anger that hit me then wasn't loud. It was quiet. The kind that sits deep and burns slow. Where is he now? I asked. David shook his head. He doesn't let me know. But he's planning something else. Something bigger. He said once he's done, there won't be a single Carter left to question him. A sound cut through the night. A low hum. Headlights approaching from the road. David's face drained of color. It's him. Before I could respond, a shot rang out. David fell to the ground. I dropped beside him, pressing my hands against the wound. Stay with me. He managed a faint whisper. He used your name. Every step. Then his hand went limp. I looked up. The black sedan had stopped at the edge of the pier. The door opened, and the man stepped out. He looked exactly like me. Same build, same face, same voice when he spoke. Always too sentimental, he said, smiling. That's what made this easy. He raised the gun, but before he could pull the trigger, red and blue lights flashed across the dock. Police cars, 3 of them. The man froze, cursed, and ran for the water. He dove in before anyone could stop him. I shouted, but it was useless. He vanished beneath the waves. Later at the station, they told me there was no record of a double anywhere. No fingerprints, no ID, no trace. The fake documents were confiscated. Officially, they called it mistaken identity. But when I got home, there was one final envelope waiting on my doorstep. Inside was a single note. Phase 2 begins when you stop watching your back. And beneath it, a photo of me sleeping in the motel room. The night after David's death, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the splash. That perfect reflection of my own face diving into black water. They never found him. No body, no trace, but I knew he wasn't gone. People like that don't disappear. They wait. The next morning, I sat in my living room surrounded by evidence. Photos, documents, the fake IDs. Everything pointed to a plan that wasn't finished yet. The police said they'd handle it, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was too old, too shaken, maybe even confused. They didn't understand this wasn't paranoia. This was personal. I started retracing his steps, and every document, every address linked to Carter & Sons Realty. One company name kept showing up, Eclipso Holdings. No address, no website, just a post office box in another city. I drove there the next day. The post office clerk looked bored when I flashed David's old business card and asked to check the box. He shrugged and handed me a small stack of mail, bills, a few legal letters, and one heavy envelope, no return address. I stepped outside, tore it open. Inside were 5 photographs, all of me. In each one, I was doing something mundane, buying groceries, walking into my house, standing by David's grave. But in the corner of every photo, the same reflection appeared. The mirror man, sometimes in a window, sometimes in a car's side mirror, always watching, and on the back of the last photo written in neat handwriting, "You built the empire. I perfected it." That night I visited my old office again. It had been sealed off since the investigation began, but I still had a back key. The power was off. The air smelled like dust and cold steel. I turned on my flashlight and stepped inside. Every file cabinet had been emptied, every computer wiped clean. But one thing was different: the mirror on the wall. When I left last week, it had been cracked. Now it was spotless, replaced. I walked up to it slowly. It was just a mirror, ordinary glass. But as I looked closer, my stomach turned. There were fingerprints behind the glass, like someone had been touching it from the other side. Then I noticed the faint sound and a hum coming from the wall. I pushed the mirror gently and it swung open like a door. Behind it, a small hidden room lit by a single fluorescent bulb. Inside were screens, dozens of them, showing live footage of streets, offices, even my own home. Every camera was labeled subject, Carter, active. He'd been watching me for months, maybe years, and on the central monitor, a live feed from a room I recognized instantly. My bedroom. The timestamp said, "Now." I raced home. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the lights were off except for the faint glow coming from upstairs. I climbed the stairs quietly, heart pounding against my ribs. The bedroom door was open. The camera was gone. But someone had left something on the bed, a small square mirror. On it was etched one word: soon. The next morning, I went back to the police. I told them everything: the hidden room, the surveillance feeds, the evidence trail. The officer nodded politely and said they'd check it out. But that night, when I went back to the building, the room was gone. The mirror was broken again, the wall behind it sealed with fresh plaster. No one believed me. That's when I realized the mirror man wasn't working alone. He had people helping him, people inside the system. For days, I tried to stay one step ahead. I moved from motel to motel using cash, keeping my phone off. But he always found me. A note left on my windshield: "Running suits you." Just like David. A voicemail from a blocked number: "How does it feel being replaced by a better version of yourself?" The voice was mine, perfectly mine. That's when I stopped running. If he wanted me to play his game, I'd play it, my way. I spent 2 days preparing. Found the old blueprints to Carter & Sons Realty. The hidden room wasn't the only secret passage. There was a service tunnel beneath the building, one that led to the old storage basement. I set up a few surprises there: cameras, a motion sensor, and one very old, very loud generator. Then I sent a message from one of the burner phones I'd found in the fake ID stash: "We need to finish phase 2. Meet me at the office. Midnight." When I got there, the sky was black, rain falling in heavy sheets. I waited in the shadows of the basement tunnel, flashlight off. At exactly midnight, I heard footsteps above, slow, deliberate, then a voice that made my blood run cold: "You're getting predictable, old man." I didn't move. The footsteps descended the stairs, echoing in the dark. The generator clicked on. and the room flooded with light. He was standing there in the mirror man. Every detail was perfect. The face, the clothes, even the way he adjusted his collar. He smiled. "You finally stopped hiding." I kept my tone calm. "Who are you?" He tilted his head. "You still don't get it, do you?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photo. One I hadn't seen in 40 years. A group shot. My old construction crew back when I first started the company. He pointed at one of the faces. A young man, thin, sharp-eyed. "That's me," he said. "The one you fired," it came rushing back. "The man I'd let go after he was caught stealing company funds. He'd sworn revenge, said he'd make me regret it." "You disappeared," I said quietly. He nodded. "I learned. I watched. I became you." He stood under the flickering light, the storm thundering above us. The mirror man, or whatever was left of him, had the same posture I did, the same half-trembling hand, the same tired eyes that had seen too much. For a moment, it felt like looking into the future, a reflection of what bitterness could do if left to rot long enough. I swallowed hard. "You destroyed everything I built. Just to prove a point?" He smirked. "No, Peter, to prove a truth. You built an empire on other men's backs, then pretended to be the victim when it all fell apart." My jaw tightened. "That's not true." He took a slow step closer. "Isn't it? You cut me off, fired me after one mistake. You didn't even remember my name, did you?" I didn't answer. He laughed, a hollow, ugly sound. "Exactly. I was nobody to you. But to me, you were everything. You had the respect, the power, the family, the life I deserved. So I learned to become you." His voice dropped lower, quieter, more deliberate. "I watched your interviews, studied your mannerisms, built my company under your shadow. While you got older slower, I became sharper, smarter, until no one could tell the difference." He took out a silver case from his jacket pocket and tossed it toward me. Inside were 2 IDs, identical. One had my name, the other his but with my face. "Identity is such a fragile thing," he whispered. "All it takes is one push and the mirror breaks." I felt the anger rising, but I forced it down. "You think this makes you powerful? You're just a coward hiding behind a reflection." He smiled wider. "No, Peter, I'm evolution." "Your extinction." He stepped closer, and I could smell the faint chemical scent on him. Metallic, sharp, like acetone. My eyes flicked toward the generator. The motion sensor light blinked once. He didn't notice. Good. I kept him talking. "What's the end game, then? You kill me, take my place?" He chuckled. "Kill you? No, that's too simple. I don't want you dead, Peter. I want you forgotten, erased. When people hear your name, I want them to think of me." He leaned closer, his reflection trembling in the half-light. "And then I'll tell the world how I rebuilt your empire, after your tragic suicide." That's when I saw it, the small recording device clipped to his belt. He'd been filming the whole thing. I took a slow step backward. My hand brushed against the switch I'd rigged to the generator earlier. It wasn't much, just a backup fuse that would overload the circuit when flipped. Enough to blow every light and lock the doors. I stared him in the eye. "You forgot something," he frowned. "What, that mirror you love so much?" I flipped the switch. It shows everything, including the truth. The lights exploded, plunging the basement into darkness. Sparks flew from the generator and the smell of burning wires filled the air. He cursed, stumbling backward. In the chaos, I moved toward him, the flashlight beam cutting across the floor. He lunged first. We collided hard, the impact knocking us both into the wall. The flashlight rolled, spinning wild shadows across the floor. For a moment, all I could hear was our breathing, ragged, heavy animal. Then came the sound, glass cracking. We both looked up. The large mirror above us, the one he'd installed himself, began to splinter. A jagged line ran straight down the middle, separating our reflections, mine on one side, his on the other. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe instinct, maybe anger. But I shoved him forward and straight into the mirror. It shattered, a deafening scream of glass and light. When the dust settled, he lay motionless on the floor, blood trickling from a dozen cuts. I stood there shaking, staring down at the man who'd spent years trying to be me. The mirror beside him reflected nothing now, just shards catching bits of my face. Half real, half ghost, the police ruled it an accident. The official report said he broke in, tried to steal company property, and died when a mirror fell on him during a struggle. No one questioned it. No one mentioned the surveillance room or the photos or the voice recordings, but I knew it wasn't over. A few weeks later, I received a package. No return address, just my name written in that same sharp handwriting. Inside was a small circular mirror, clean, untouched, and a note: "You can't kill a reflection." At night, I still see him sometimes. Not in dreams. In reflections, the bathroom mirror, a car window, even the black glass of my phone when the screen goes dark, always standing just behind me, smiling, and yet, sometimes I wonder if maybe he was right. Because when I look at myself now, I don't see the man I used to be. I see someone harder, emptier. Someone who's done terrible things in the name of justice. Maybe he didn't steal my identity. Maybe he showed me what I really was all along. I close the mirror every night before I sleep now. But every morning when I wake up, it's open again, and on the glass, faint but clear, written in the dust: "Welcome back, Peter." When people say time heals everything, they've never buried their reflection. It's been 6 months since the night in the basement, since I watched my mirror self fall in a storm of shattered glass. The police called it an accident. I called it closure. But the truth is, closure doesn't come wrapped in neat endings. It comes in whispers, in flickering lights, in the sound of glass cracking when no one's around. After the investigation, I sold the old house. Too many mirrors, too many shadows. I moved to a quiet place by the sea, an old cabin where the waves drown out memories. Or at least they try. I thought I'd escaped, until the letters started coming again. The first one was simple: "You missed something," no signature, no fingerprints. Just my name written in that sharp, practiced handwriting, the same one I'd seen on the mirror. Then came another, and another, each one more personal, more specific, details no one could have known. The color of the tie I wore to my wife's funeral. The way my son used to hum before he lied. Even the name of the lake where I scattered my brother's ashes. Things no one should have known. It felt like he was alive. But that was impossible, wasn't it? I hired a private investigator, a man named Curtis. Former cop, good instincts, bad habits. He ran background checks, reviewed camera footage, even dug through old medical reports. His conclusion: if the guy was dead, he stayed that way. But when he slid the case folder across the table, something inside it made my blood run cold. It was a coroner's report. The body in the morgue had my name on it. Peter Crawford, same height, same age, same scar on the left hand, except that wasn't my body. I confronted the coroner myself. He swore by the report. Dental records, DNA, everything matched. I asked him how that was possible. He shrugged. Sometimes identity's just paperwork. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to the mirror in the cabin bathroom, the only one I hadn't removed. The reflection stared back at me, calm, steady, alive. But when I leaned closer, I noticed something strange. A faint line, like a crack, running down my cheek. I touched it. The skin was smooth, but in the reflection it split. Days passed. The letters kept coming, each one more taunting. You buried the wrong man. He's still out there. Look behind you. I started recording myself at night, hoping to catch something, a shadow, a sound, anything. But every morning the footage was blank, except for one thing. At 3:17 a.m., the camera tilted slightly on its own and faced the mirror. And there, just for a second, another figure stood behind me. Same suit, same face, only smiling. Curtis didn't believe me at first. Until he did, I got a call from him one night. His voice was shaking. "You need to see this," he said. He'd been reviewing the old security footage from the night of the accident. The tape had glitched before the cops arrived. Static for a few seconds, then darkness. But Curtis enhanced the footage frame by frame. In one frame, just before the mirror shattered, the reflection moved first. Not me. The reflection. The next morning, Curtis was found dead in his car. The police said heart attack, but the side mirror was missing. That's when I realized the reflection wasn't gone. It had just moved. It wasn't haunting me. It was replacing me. Everywhere I went, small inconsistencies began to appear. People greeting me by the wrong name. My credit cards showing charges I hadn't made. My company emails being sent from an account I never opened. Someone, something, was living my life in parallel, and I was slowly fading from it. Then came the call. "Mr. Crawford?" A woman's voice said. "This is St. Augustine Medical. Your brother regained consciousness this morning." I froze. "My brother's been dead for 5 years," I said. A pause. Then, "Sir, we have you listed as his emergency contact. He's been asking for you, by name. The hospital was 2 towns away. I drove through the night, the storm chasing behind me. When I got there, the nurse led me to a private room. The man in the bed looked frail, tubes running from his nose, eyes half open. But when he turned toward me, he smiled. "Hello, Peter," he whispered. It was him, the mirror man. I took a step back. "You're supposed to be dead," he laughed, dry, rasping. "Death is just a reflection, Peter." I walked through mine. He reached for the tray beside his bed, picked up a small mirror fragment and turned it toward me. "Do you see now?" he said. In the reflection, the man lying in the bed wasn't him. It was me. Same eyes. Same face, but lifeless. He coughed, blood spotting the white sheets. "You think you killed me, but what you broke was your own boundary. You didn't push me through the mirror, Peter. You pulled yourself in." I shook my head. "That's insane," he smiled faintly. "Is it? Then why can't you remember what you did before tonight? Why are there gaps in your story?" I froze because he was right. There were holes, hours I couldn't recall, moments I couldn't explain. The mirror, the letters, Curtis's death, all fragments of a life slipping out of sequence. He leaned closer, whispering, "You're not living my reflection, Peter. I'm living yours." The machine started to beep faster. The nurses rushed in, pulling me back. He flatlined within minutes. They covered his face. The room fell silent. But as I stood there staring at the sheet, the mirror shard on the tray tilted slightly, catching the fluorescent light. And for just a heartbeat, I saw it again. My reflection, smiling back. After the funeral, I returned to the cabin. Everything looked the same. The books, the furniture, the faint smell of salt and dust. But on the desk was one final envelope. Inside was a key. And a note: "You can finish it, Peter, or you can let it finish you." The key had the number 317 etched into it. That was the same time the camera turned toward the mirror. I found the old facility where it all began. The underground lab where he'd studied human behavioral patterns for my company's R&D division before I fired him. The locks were rusted. The corridors smelled of mold and static. Every door had been sealed, except one. Room 317. Inside were rows of monitors, all flickering with static. Then one by one they turned on, showing footage of me, sleeping, driving, standing in front of mirrors. Years of my life, recorded, cataloged, archived, and on the last monitor, a live feed of me, standing in that same room, except on the screen. I wasn't alone. Someone stood behind me. I turned slowly. There he was. The mirror man. Alive. Whole. Smiling. He stepped forward, the glow of the screens outlining his face and my face. "This is how it ends, Peter," he said. "Not with death, but with replacement." He lifted a small glass device, the same kind from our old lab. Neural resonance projector. It mapped thought patterns, simulated consciousness across recorded data. He'd found a way to transfer himself, through reflections, through recordings. "Every time you looked into a mirror," he said softly, "you fed me." I lunged at him, knocking the device from his hand. It shattered against the console, sparks flying. The lights flickered. The monitors went black, and then I saw hundreds of reflections, not just mine, not just his and ours, multiplying endlessly in every shard, every screen. I screamed, but my voice echoed back, hundreds of times, all slightly different. Then, silence. When I woke, the room was empty. No screens, no glass. No blood, just a single mirror standing in the center. I walked toward it. My reflection stared back, calm, steady, familiar. I smiled. It smiled back. I lifted my hand. It lifted its hand, but when I turned away, the reflection didn't. They found me 2 days later, wandering near the coast, disoriented. No memory of how I got there. They said I was lucky to be alive, maybe they're right. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the water, it doesn't blink when I do. And when I walk away, I swear I can still see it, standing there smiling. I thought I buried my reflection. But maybe the reflection buried me.